Dr. Jeff, welcome to Crosswalk Talk. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Michael, great to be with you.
We are talking to Dr. Jeff Myers. He's president of Summit Ministries, and he leads Summit Ministries' new online video series, Should Christians Avoid Politics? That's the name of it. It challenges Christians to engage in politics from a biblical standpoint in order to evoke change. Dr. Jeff, obvious question, of course, is what led you to create this series, and what do you hope Christians will take away from it?
Let me first of all say, Michael, this is not sponsored by any political party or interest group. There are quite a few video courses out there that are. This is not one of them. This is one we came up with for two reasons. First, because our students at Summit Ministries mostly are between 16 and 22 years of age, and about half of them this last summer are first-time voters. They're nervous. They want to make a good decision, but they see all the political infighting and they aren't sure what to do. And the second thing is Christians, by and large, are not as involved as they should be as citizens. Now, I'm not saying that they have to be an enthusiastic member of a political party or a political junkie, but we are citizens in the kingdom of man as well as being citizens in the kingdom of God, and non-involvement is not an option. If you've got to vote, you got to vote.
Good point. Of course, you debunk so-called myths in this series. Yeah. One of those myths is that politics really doesn't matter when compared to what ultimately matters. How do you respond to that? Because that's one of the more common objections.
Michael, the answer to that question also helps us understand how to balance out our political responsibilities with our other responsibilities. I go into the theory of sphere sovereignty in this video course a little bit, and it's a pretty simple idea. I think that there are three aspects of society that are properly basic: the family, the church, and the state. Those three spheres have to be balanced with one another. Think of three balloons in a box. If one of them gets blown up bigger, then it squeezes the other two. Family is actually where economics is located and is where education is located. Even today, 90% of the businesses in the world are family-owned enterprises. And education, I believe, is the responsibility of the family primarily. They may outsource that to somebody else, but it's not anybody else's responsibility. The government is for the purpose of obviously securing the rights of the people guaranteed in whatever founding document they have, and also ensuring the free flow of commerce. So the government is not like a dictator that tells you what you can and can't do. It's more like a traffic cop that guides the traffic so that things flow smoothly. And the church is the conscience of the government and the part of the training ground for families. So churches don't tell the government what to do, but churches do need to stand up for what is right and what is wrong and encourage the rulers to do what is good and not what is evil.
Another myth is that you tackle in the series is that the lesser of two evils is still evil. I'm not sure I've got that myth exactly right, but you can answer the question. How do you respond to that as well when folks talk about, they just want to avoid all of it because the lesser of two evils is still evil?
I think probably everybody can identify with this. You look at two political candidates and think, well, how am I going to decide? I don't like either one of these people. It's important to note that a vote is not a like. A vote is a hiring decision. And you make that hiring decision based on whether that person could effectively manage the government according to the principles of the Constitution or founding document on which that government is based. So I think instead of thinking of, well, I have to hold my nose and vote for the lesser of two evils, we should ask the question, is one of these candidates more likely to lessen evil? Now, think about that in terms of the federal government of the United States. You got in the Constitution that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Those three things, life, liberty, and property, are central to the Constitution. Which of the candidates is most likely to lessen evil when it comes to life? No human being should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. It is always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. So you're looking for someone who's going to lessen evil by upholding the Constitution on that question. Same thing with liberty. I'm looking for a candidate who doesn't necessarily believe that the government is some kind of a candy store that we want to throw the doors open to everyone, but someone who sees that the government helps secure the rights that are given by God to ensure the free flow of commerce and of the freedoms that are guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. And then property is essential as well. Which of the candidates is most likely to lessen the evil of the diminishment of private property on which all enterprise and ultimately all of society's wealth is based?
That's helpful. That's very helpful. We live in a divided culture. It seems like it's more polarized than it used to be. I think it is. I'm curious, how can Christians engage in these political discussions without contributing to the divisiveness? Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on that?
Well, some of the divisiveness is real. Some of it is manufactured for the purpose of selling us news or gaining power.
Mm.
But I tend to, when it comes to political elections, try to encourage people to not see this as liberal versus conservative as the primary consideration. Now, I know that sounds weird, and I'm grateful to have a chance to kind of expand on that a little bit. People will say, well, in some ways Jesus was liberal, in some ways he was conservative, or in some ways the Bible's liberal, some ways the Bible's conservative. This is not about liberal conservative, it's about the management of government. Okay, that's what your vote is about. It's not a popularity contest. It
Mm.
is not, it's not just about uh, whether this person is on this side or that side. Who can manage the government best to lessen evil and promote flourishing? The government can't manufacture flourishing. Governments cannot be kind. They can't be generous because governments don't produce value. Governments only redistribute what is produced by people in a free market. You can't give to one person without taking from someone else. So with that said, as a basis for the question, I think Christians often think in terms of unity, which is good, but we think that unity comes when you ignore tough questions. I was with a group in California. They asked me to come and speak in their church on politics. And I asked them, how many of you are married? And a lot of the hands went up. And I asked, how many of you want unity in your marriage? And fortunately, all of the hands that were already up stayed up. And then I asked them, you can put your hand down, but how many of you, I mean, really honestly, think inside of yourself, how many of you find that unity is easy?
Mm.
Because it's usually not, is it? You have to fight for what's good. You have to fight for your marriage. You have to fight for your kids. And sometimes that's not easy, but the unity is not diminishing any disagreement. The unity is working through disagreements in a spirit of grace. That is something Christians can model and should be modeling for society at large.
Let me ask you a question that looks at this from the opposite perspective, because, of course, your goal is to help people get engaged in politics in a healthy biblical way. Some Christians right now, I would say, have an unhealthy view. From both sides. I've talked to people who think if the vice president wins, then the world is going to end. I've talked to people who think if the former president wins, the world is going to end. They're fearful, and that's all they think about. And they seem to have left out the sovereignty of God. How do you help people who are in that realm of thought?
Are we speaking of Christians primarily?
Yes, Christians.
Well, John 8:32 is helpful, I think. Jesus said, if you follow my teachings, you'll be my disciples and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The word for truth there in Greek is aletheia. It means reality. So Jesus is not saying, I'm coming to kind of lighten God up a little bit so we can all be in a better mood. He's saying, I am revealing reality itself to you through my teachings. Christians need to hold on to that first and foremost.
Mm.
What are some of those realities that God created and that we're made in his image? We are made to create and to relate by our Heavenly Father. Another reality is the fallenness of humanity, that people will tend to move toward what is bad. Institutions will tend to move toward what is bad unless they are constantly encouraged and built up to do what is good. And then I think the third thing is the reality of redemption, that that Jesus coming into the picture gives us hope for the future. So I don't think that Christians should make their decisions based on fear, but make their decisions based on a calculus that's about reality itself. If someone, I'm trying to think of how to say this without coming across in the wrong way, but if Jesus opens up reality for us to the degree that people reject Jesus, they are living in an unreality. They're living in a fantasy world. And that's not mentally healthy for personal reasons. It doesn't allow you to connect with other people. And it certainly doesn't allow you to create a good society. So I think as Christians, we have to recognize that campaigners campaign. That's what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to try to persuade us to vote. We have to ask the question, what reasons are they giving? What is about their platform helps reinforce those fears of government, family, and church? Which ones are most likely to follow the Constitution and to not try to extend it beyond where the founders put it? I think those are the kinds of questions that tend to get ignored when we're focused primarily on the controversy.
This is a free resource, I should say that. And Dr. Jeff is the best website, summit.org/politics.
Politics, yes. Summit.org
That's easy
slash
to remember.
politics. That's right.
Easy
Yeah.
to.
And let me suggest some possible uses for the course because it's free. You can, people have used it for personal study. I know husbands and wives who've studied it together, boyfriends and girlfriends studying it together, trying to make decisions, young adults getting together because they're voting maybe for the first time and they're trying to figure out what to do. Church small groups, Sunday schools, business groups, all different kinds of people who suspect that they need to be better citizens than they really are, but they're reluctant to be involved because politics is honestly exhausting and it can make you angry. And most people don't really enjoy it. But we are citizens. If you've got to vote, you got to vote. And your vote is just the first act of citizenship. It's the starting gun of the race. It's not the race itself.
Before I let you go, I would like for you to talk about Summit Ministries student conferences. That's how I got to know that's how I first heard about Summit Ministries. You guys have these annual student conferences. They are on location, I believe, in Georgia and in Colorado. I've always wanted to send my kids there. I never have, but maybe I will in the future. They're 12 right now. I think they're probably, I don't know what the minimum age is, but help people know about those student ministries and what they do and why maybe people should consider it.
In 4 years, we want to have those Faust children here. And
okay.
just make sure they come up and say hi to me and say, my dad said I have to say hi to you. And then I'll know that they're there. But Michael, here's my appeal to people who have young adults who are 16 to 22 years of age. They're your children, they're your grandchildren, they're people you know from church. These young adults stand a very small chance of emerging into their 20s with a strong faith unless they have some specific help to figure out how their biblical worldview applies to the world around them. And that's what happens at Summit Ministries. So students come together, as you mentioned, either in Colorado or in Georgia, both beautiful locations, and they meet with 180 to 200 other young adults who are young leaders who want to love Jesus and make a difference in the world. And they're guided in that process by major Christian thought leaders in every area from apologetics to theology, philosophy, economics, and so forth. And over the course of the 2 weeks, the program has such an effect that these young adults from a generation where only 1% embrace a biblical worldview, by the time they leave, 95% say they have a biblical worldview. And we continue studying them every year, 5 years and 10 years. So we keep a running average here. 85% stay strong in their biblical worldview. So my appeal to parents and grandparents and churches and schools is, if you knew a program like that existed, would you not move heaven and earth to make that possible for every young adult you know? And we want them to study with us this coming summer. So just go to summit.org and you can get all the information you need.
I will do my best to send them in 4 years, and I will tell them to go say hi to you. That would be an awesome thing, Dr. Jeff. We've been speaking to Dr. Jeff Myers, president of Summit Ministries. They have a new online video series, Should Christians Avoid Politics? It is free. People should check it out at summit.org/politics. Dr. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.